Guys, welcome to the fourth semester of CoalitionM on KFHS Radio. I'm your host, Carson Lopez. Fair warning, there was some rain earlier and possibly some storming outside, so if we lose reception or if anything happens, I do apologize in advance. This is my senior year, so very exciting, and today we're going to kick it off the first episode of the year with the best guest yet. I have with me David Smalley. David is a Texas pastor starting his second church plant in San Antonio. I'm just kidding. He's an atheist. And he's got his own show that you've probably heard me talk about several times called Dogma Debate. And he did start that in Texas, but now he's moved on to bigger, better California, I guess. So, yeah, plenty of people have heard me talk about it on here because it's my absolute favorite podcast. I'm pretty particular about my podcasts, so I don't just listen to whatever. So please check out Dogma Debate on Patreon, and I'll let him do some plugging more throughout the show, of course. So thanks for joining tonight, David. I am absolutely beyond stoked to have you on finally. How have you been?
I have been extremely busy, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. We've talked a few times, and I realize the inspiration Dogma Debate's been for you, and it's really an honor. I love what you do. I love your show, the clips that I've heard from your show. It's really inspiring to hear you continue to carry that torch along, and you're so damn good at it. So it's an honor to know that I've been one of your inspirations. Seriously, I love what you do.
Give me a second to just... to just relish in the moment. Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're good.
Can you say that one more time into the mic?
I think you got it.
I don't know. We'll see. Well, tell us what Dogma Debate is about. I've kind of mentioned it sporadically to my listeners about that it's basically just kind of a debate show, and you bring on religious guests, Christian guests, and you kind of talk them out of their faiths, as you put it. So tell my listeners a little bit more about how you operate with Dogma Debate, what kind of show it is for you, and what kind of guests you have on, and what kind of guests you're open to having on, and things like that.
Yeah, so essentially, and I want to present this the way I present it to the guests, because if I'm talking to a group of atheists, I say, I debate Christians, or I bring pastors on and debate them, or whatever. And that's not a really, I don't think that's a true, I don't think that's the best way to describe Dogma Debate. I think the best way to describe it is, I think more clearly about it when I'm talking with a pastor or a preacher that I want to get on the show. And I think I give a more accurate description, which is, it's a platform followed probably by about 65 to 70% atheists, but still a solid 30% or greater, some sort of religious audience. And it's really a platform for believers or people who disagree with me or have a completely different worldview than I do to present their case and present their ideas. And I give them that platform to present their ideas to people who don't agree with it, under the one stipulation that they're okay with being respectfully challenged. The one thing I don't let people do on my show is preach. So if I ask you a question and you launch into a sermon, I'm going to stop you and say, hold on, please answer my question. But as long as you're answering questions, you're going to be able to say whatever you want to say. And sometimes I'll start the show off by asking the person, what's your core message? What do you want to get out? In fact, now on our website, when people go to fill out to be a guest on the show, one of the questions is, what is your core message? And they have an opportunity to type whatever they want there that they really want to get out. And whether I agree with that or not, I make sure that core message is given out to the audience. Because my whole idea here is not to beat down religion. It's to challenge ideas in the public sphere with what I think are better ideas. And when I'm going to do that, I have to be open to my ideas also being challenged by people who think my ideas are bad and they want to correct my ideas with their better ideas. And so it's a respectful dialogue of people who disagree. That's the best way I can put it.
Is that received mostly pretty well with people you talk to who you're trying to get on the show? Most of them are like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It seems pretty
Here's the thing I thought would be a problem a long time ago is sort of introducing comedy into it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that Christians would listen and then go, oh, I don't want to be a part of that because a comedian made some sort of sexual innuendo. And we've had that happen before. One time, we've had one Christian who wouldn't come on because he heard, I think the joke, it was something stupid. Like we were doing live radio at the time, and I went on a commercial break, and I went to the restroom during commercial break. And when I came back from break, we were live on air, and I said, so I was in the restroom just now, and I had an idea. And one of the female co-hosts says, ooh, it happened in the restroom. Was it big? And I went, oh, it was huge. And then I told my idea, and everybody had this cheesy laugh at a stupid joke. Well, I invited a pastor to come on shortly after that, and he skipped through to some episode and just randomly picked like a 60-second clip to listen to, and that just happened to be what he heard. And he replied back with something so just like, it was so just prudish. He was just like, any show who makes reference to one's genitalia is not a show I would like to participate in. And so I was like, and his name was Kyle Butt, by the way. Yes, Kyle Butt, B-U-T-T. He's a Christian apologist. He's an author. Dan Barker's debated him.
I'll write that down.
And so he refused to come on the show for that. So from that point on, if anyone's ever heard the show and heard me do an apology to Kyle Butt, we got to where we would say, I'm so sorry, Kyle Butt. I'm so sorry, Kyle Butt. Anytime we made any sort of sexual innuendo or any inappropriate joke that we think Kyle would be offended by, we would just publicly apologize to Kyle Butt.
Aww.
And someone wrote me not too long ago and said, why do you keep saying I'm sorry, Cow Butt? And yeah, they thought I was saying cow butt, C-O-W. And I realized it's just my southern accent, I guess. Kyle and cow probably sound a lot alike. So yeah, I haven't told that story in a while, but I thought moving into comedy and having more inappropriate things on the show would scare the Christians away. Turns out he's the only one. A lot of Christians look at that as Jesus hung out with, and what they'll say, Jesus hung out with taxpayers or tax collectors and prostitutes and harlots or whatever. And so them coming on a show where sometimes we say shit, damn, or ass isn't that big of a deal. So they kind of understand they're coming into my domain. Mm-hmm. But look, if you're a Christian and you have the truth, and there's an atheist who has a large atheist listening audience, you have an opportunity to share your faith with thousands and thousands of people. So if you're going to say, I'm not going to do it because I heard a joke about someone referencing the size of their genitalia, or someone made a joke about boobs, or no, he said the word shit 4 minutes into his show. Well, good luck ever converting anyone to your church. I mean, if you're scared to talk to adults who use adult language, you're just not in reality. So for the most part, Christians not only do not worry about the language, they partake in the language and the jokes, and use that language themselves when they come on, and it resonates well with the audience, and people go, you know what, he's got a point, or she's got a point. And it hasn't been as scary as I thought it would be for most believers. So yeah, for the most part, they love it, they come on, they have a good time.
Well, and I think it speaks a lot too, just to the general nature of your show, because I think some people are generally intimidated by even the name. If the word debate is in the title, people get kind of worried. I guess that it's going to get emotional, it's going to get heated, that things are going to be said, they're going to make them really comfortable. But then once you start, you maintain throughout the other show, minus the flat earther one, that which I understand was not your fault. Just things get challenged and ideas get tossed around and taken apart and kind of deconstructed into their main elements by both people, by both you and whoever your guest is. But there's never a feeling of you're an idiot, there's never like nobody ever gets to that point. Nobody, because you make it about the ideas and the things that are coming out of their mouths, not about who's saying them. And
I
so,
really appreciate you getting that. That
yeah.
that's a big thing for me. It's super important for me to get across, and that's really why I started the show because it started off as a blog. I don't know if you know this. It was on Blogspot. The original was I think it was dogmadebate.blogspot.com. It was just a place for me to write out an idea of a challenge to religion, and then Christians would come there in droves and tell me why I was wrong, and that's what I liked. In fact, I almost called the site Convert Me because I wanted to offer opportunities for people to convert me. It's funny now seeing Steven Crowder use the change my mind banner when he
Hmm.
does the table talks at the universities. That's essentially what I had started doing about almost 12 years ago. It was, here's my idea, make me a believer, convert me to your faith.
Hmm.
And then I wanted it to be about more than just religion. So in its initial phase, I called it the Smalley Debate because I wanted to be able to debate about many things. And then I just didn't like it, and I kept playing with the name. And Dogma Debate fit well. It was a short name that, they both start with D. It's a short name that everybody knows how to spell, but people rarely use. Right. So it's something if someone
Yeah.
says dogma, there's a movie from the 90s. But other than that, I think it was 90s, maybe the early 2000s. Yeah, I don't know. There's a movie from a long time ago. Other than that, people know what it means, but they never write it or spell it. So it was going to be easy. I wasn't going to have to spell the domain name a lot.
Mm.
And so that's why I went with that. It was a marketing decision. Looking back on it, I mean, I could get how people could be intimidated thinking I'm coming on to debate. And a lot of times I have to tell them it's more of a discussion. I want to see where you are on something. And I may push back a little. At this point, though, I literally have thousands of hours of recorded conversations that any of them can go listen to. And overwhelmingly, Carson, what I hear is they just go, I went back and listened to the show and I really appreciate how respectful you are. So even though I get passionate or I may, raise my voice sometimes from, over this issue or that, no one ever leaves feeling stupid. I noticed that on a lot of blogs and a lot of sites where people, and this was 10 years ago, where people would go comment on something, it was definitely black and white. It was a line down the middle. Either you're a Christian and your comments were all, you atheists are immoral bastards who are all going to hell. So nothing you say ever matters. Or you were an atheist simply saying, Jesus is Santa Claus for grown-ups. You're all a bunch of idiots believing stupid fairy tales. That was the only two conversations that I ever saw happening. Those were the only two conversations I ever saw. And so Dogma Debate was really, I felt, filling a gap for dialogue, for nuance, because I didn't think everything about religion was ridiculous, even though I didn't believe in the core tenets of the faith. Um, and I knew that somehow out there were going to be Christians who would be understanding of why I lost my faith when I once had it. And so I wanted to build this. You hear about the silent majority all the time, right? They're going to be reasonable and they're going to be the silent majority. And you never hear from them because they're silent. And I just wanted to give a platform to that silent majority on both sides to say, let's meet in the middle and have a really good discussion about faith that doesn't have to be black or white. And just real quick before we move away from this, I will say you haven't heard this yet, but we just recorded a new episode yesterday with a new flat earther.
Yeah.
And this conversation goes much better.
Oh, good.
He actually brings up a point. Here's a little teaser for your audience. He actually brings up a point that is inconsistent in our worldview. And
Ooh.
we presented him with evidence, and then he presented us with something else. And when we presented our second evidence, he went, wait a minute, doesn't that run contrary to your other evidence? And we had to all go, yeah, it does. We need to go figure out how to make that happen. Now, his inconsistencies were far greater. His leaps of faith were far greater. But we all had to be honest about it and go, we don't know why that is. And so he's a really good guy. His name's Travis Finley. And I can't wait for you to hear this episode. It's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
It's redeeming
Excited.
myself for me flipping out on
God. Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm excited to listen to that. Yeah, when you're talking about that you were only seeing two positions, two of the kind of the worst and most extreme and immovable, and very impervious to reason positions on both atheism and Christianity. That's even before I found your show, that's basically what made me want to do this too, because I was seeing that I wasn't really paying attention to religion much, but definitely in politics and in political discourse, there was definitely either, the very, very left or the very, very right. And I started, once Trump was elected, I started to kind of think, okay, this was definitely real. And so there are definitely real people out there who have these ideas about how it should be, and they voted for Trump. And so in order to understand where they're coming from and to even maybe be able to feel like I have a seat on the panel to even argue with them, I have to understand them first. And so that's also kind of why I started this too, was just because I was just legitimately curious about who these Trump supporters are and were. And so I've brought I've actually gotten in worse arguments with liberals than I have conservatives. Just
Me
because,
too, 100%.
yeah.
100%. And I never thought I would say this, but let me chime in here to help you out with kind of, because I've had a similar experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it one time and so many people got upset with me. And then I realized the more I say it, the less people that are left that will still get upset about it. So just be brave and be you and say what you want, because the first explosion that happens at you will always be the biggest. And then those people stop paying attention and you get more reasonable followers. Mm-hmm. That's the way it works. I never thought I would say this. I'm someone who had, for about 5.5 years, I had a segment on my show called Republicans Say the Darndest Things. Mm-hmm. And I would play clips about these ridiculous Republicans saying things. And I'm telling you, all the years that I sat across from conservatives and believers that would tell me they think that I'm going to hell, or that I'm immoral, or that I get my morals from a God I deny, they always did it with some form of, shall I say, gentleness and respect. 1 Peter 3:15. There's a part of them that goes, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, but I'm not going to be a complete ass about it. Not
it's out of love for them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not once have I ever had a Christian try to ruin my show, or try to have my sponsors canceled, or find it a version of activism to spread lies or rumors about me to try to get my public reputation smeared so that people wouldn't support me financially. All of those people who have ever done anything like that, every single one of them have claimed to be a part of the activist left, who would find it a sort of notch in their belt to get someone taken down that they've labeled some sort of, I don't know, if you're pro-government, if you're not an anarchist, if you're not 100% believing that every cop is racist, if you're not 100% believing that, just name it. It doesn't matter if if you're not on board with gay marriage, or if you're, it doesn't matter. It seems like the conservatives would say, well, I disagree with you, let's have the debate, and they would be okay with talking about it. And the folks on the far left, liberals now, classical liberals, would still also be willing to have that debate and would say that the conservatives are wrong. But the folks on the far left would start to demonize the person and say, you're corrupt, you're terrible, how can I make you starve, or how can I make you get fired from your job, or how can I ruin your reputation? And they'll tweet that you're a pedophile, they'll tweet that you're, whatever, they'll call your bosses. I've had folks on the left call my podcast network and tell them that I'm a member of a secret white supremacist group to try to get my show canceled. Conservatives never did that to me. Christians never did that to me. It was only when I started speaking out on my show saying that I think what Antifa is doing is wrong, or that I think Antifa is taking it too far, or that whatever. Only when I started that did people start trying to actually ruin my career. So there's something to be said about how I agree with the folks on the left way more than I agree with the folks on the right, but I disagree with the behaviors and methods that the left is approaching.
Yeah, I can absolutely attest to that. I have lots. As you were saying that, I was just thinking of an example of one of the very first episodes that I did, where I brought 4 or 5 people in with me and we talked about this. I've never really heard much about it lately, but I'm sure it's still out there. This movement called Latin X. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
It's basically a movement that is pro gender kind of acknowledgement that not everybody is going to be male, female, and strictly adhere to those rules, quote unquote, of being male or female. And it's about kind of changing the Spanish language to fit how certain Latin American or Hispanic or even Spanish people feel about themselves. So replacing, how in the Spanish language there's kind of gendered verbs and pronouns and things like that. Well, not verbs, but so kind of replacing the O or the A with an X is how I've understood it so far. And so,
so that there is no feminine or masculine words anymore.
Right? Yeah, I'm probably botching the explanation of it, but that's kind of how I understand it so far.
I get it. Okay.
And so me and Stephanie have a real problem with this. And there was a guest who it seemed like everybody by the way who was in with me was pretty considerably liberal. Had one who was anti-choice, anti-abortion, but for the most part she's pretty liberal, and just in terms of ideology. But one of the guests, it seemed like when he kind of ran out of logic and reason behind this Latinx movement, he resolved to accusing Stephanie of silencing these people who and accusing her of not letting them be themselves, of not letting them be acknowledged by the rest of us, and it just seemed so juvenile, and it seemed
religious.
Yeah, it seemed dogmatic, because it was like, look, we can have a discussion about, and I think we definitely went over this too. We were like, no one's silencing anybody, and in fact, we're doing the opposite. We're talking about it. We're letting these people talk about it, but challenging somebody is not telling them to shut up. In fact, it's the opposite. It's tell me what you mean by that, or what is the point of that? What's the logic behind it? And so, telling someone to shut up is telling someone to shut up, And so, yeah, while you were talking about that, I could just think of the people who do this, and they do it on social media. They do it, they're really bad at conversations. I've come to find out, the ones who feel so.
I gotta tell you, I'm so glad you exist.
Good. Feelings mutual, buddy.
Let me tell you why. I think that it's not only important that we have more reasonable, rational voices out there talking about these tough issues, but also people who aren't afraid to take the side of something that they feel like the group doesn't want them to take. Because as you know, you're in the same circles I'm in these super atheist, secular, extra liberal circles. Anytime an issue comes up, you know exactly what answer you're supposed to have. If someone goes, hey, should we make all of the bathrooms gender neutral at all of the conventions, even the giant shared bathrooms? We all know, regardless of how we personally feel, we know exactly what the correct answer is. You're supposed to say yes to that. Now, if you walk into what you know to be the woman's restroom, and you go in there and you see a guy and it makes you uncomfortable, you're not allowed to say that. You can't. Even if you can admit it's my culture that does it and I realize it's a problem, if you just admit that, maybe you do want to go to a restroom with all women to make yourself feel better, then you're going to get labeled a certain way, and you're not even allowed to mention it.
Yeah.
And that was a thing that I said one time. I mentioned something about a convention we went to where they had put a sheet of paper over, I think it was the American Atheist Convention in Utah, and they put a piece of paper over gender neutral, or all genders, and there was a piece of paper over the men's restroom and a piece over the women's. And I was watching people walk up and then lift the paper up and look to see.
Yeah, I went to a convention like that. Yeah.
Because the vast majority of people wanted to go to where they had been going to be comfortable. And I did too. I didn't want to go to the women's restroom on accident. And you know what my reason was? I've interviewed enough women on my show to know that it makes them very uncomfortable to be alone in a room with a man they don't know. And so I didn't want to make a woman uncomfortable by going to the wrong restroom. Even though in this world there is no wrong restroom, there is no gender, you just go pee, right? Well, I didn't want to go in there and make a woman feel, what if we're the only two in there and she starts to get nervous? I don't want to be the source of that. So even from a liberal perspective of understanding the plight of women and assault and the large percentage of women who are sexually assaulted or harassed, keeping all that in mind, I didn't want to be the source of that. So that's why I was uncomfortable. But as soon as I said I wasn't 100% on board with everybody sharing a restroom, I was immediately labeled neocon, conservative, misogynist, and I couldn't explain myself fast enough to back out of that. So being willing to just speak up and say, no, I get it, but as soon as you say but, those who are focused on activism will absolutely turn on you. And you've seen that on your own show. And so I'm glad that you exist, because it's not just important to have more rational voices. It's important to have rational voices within minority groups, whether it's sexual orientation or gender or female or Hispanic or all of these categories that different people will associate with. And then we get into intersectionality. It's funny when someone who has multiple intersections can still say, no, that's free speech, let him be wrong, right?
Yeah,
Let him say something that is a ridiculous idea, and then let's address that bad idea with a better idea. Let's just talk about it. So I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing and not letting the overall driving force that is the left curtail your speech into thinking, I don't want to say that because I don't want the audience to turn on me. They're going to turn on you. That's by definition what they do, right? Because ultimately what they're doing, every extreme group does this. This isn't just atheists. This isn't just liberals. The conservatives did it too. They're on the search for the perfect activist. They are going and drilling down, and their group is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is how they're going to burn themselves out eventually. But just keep being you and keep being honest. Just keep being you and keep being honest, because we need those voices out there. We need someone to stand up and say, listen, if you're out there and you do something that the rest of your group disagrees with, and then you find yourself going, wait a minute, I want to say something, but I'm afraid of what the group's going to say. Stop right there and think about what you felt like in your church. You're sitting there going, I'm not buying this. I'm not buying this, but I can't raise my hand. I'm not allowed to ask questions. If I tell someone that I had sex before marriage, or if I tell someone that I don't really buy the whole Jesus turns into a cracker story, I can't really tell anybody because I'm going to get ostracized, or my college fund's going to be taken, or I'm going to get kicked out of my house, or I'm not going to be allowed to be married in this certain temple, and my mom's not going to be proud of me, and all this self-hate that gets put on you. That's religious mentality. And our group, our atheists, were supposed to be above that. We were supposed to have come out of that and learned from it. And it's like we left one religion and started a new one called the left. And it's blowing my mind how many atheists are acting religiously. When that happened on your show and that guy ran out of rational arguments, he started attacking Stephanie. Now, that is exactly what we've seen happen 5 or 6 years ago from the religious right. We would have someone on the show. We would say, but this argument falls apart. But this argument falls apart. What do they always fall on? Well, who are you to make some moral statement? You're immoral. You get your morals from Satan. They attack the person because they've run out of arguments. So this person who was probably somewhat secular or atheist started acting religiously and dogmatic because they ran out of smart things to say. And instead of just snapping out of it and going, wait a minute, I'm out of smart things to say, maybe I should change my position, they can't. Not only have they been indoctrinated now into this new belief system that everything that wipes out genders is a good thing, that's even if we have to go change language or whatever, not only is that it, they have this whole other group of people just like them that makes them afraid to raise their hand and say, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe my group is wrong about this. They're back in church, sitting in the pew, going, yeah, I don't really have a good reason for why Jesus came back to life, but I'm not saying anything. Aunt Barbara's sitting right there. That's what we're seeing from these people, just like the person that was on your show.
Yeah.
And it's sad to watch otherwise skeptical, reasonable people bow to this new religious thinking of I'm not allowed to speak my mind. And it's sad, really.
Well, I think that, just because somebody wakes up from Christianity or Islam, or I don't really hear about Hindus, but I guess I'm sure plenty of them are atheists. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But definitely Christianity, just because somebody falls out of the logic behind Christianity, I don't think that necessarily makes them of a skeptical mind, because and one idea doesn't sit well with you anymore doesn't mean you're not susceptible to this whole myriad of other things that are just as illogical, but you can't see it because it's got a different name on the jar, So
And you know what?
What?
I think I'm going to go a step further. And not only are you right about that, I think that atheists are more susceptible. And let me tell you why.
Mhm.
I gave a talk called Eating Our Own, How You Can Save the Atheist Movement.
Was that in Kansas City?
I don't remember.
I thought you did that because you did that. You did a talk like right after we left.
Where I split the crowd up in the groups?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's on Seth's channel.
Yeah,
right after we left.
Yeah, right after we had to go.
You didn't even stick around for my talk, but you want me on your show. I'm done. I'm walking out of this interview. Ridiculous. I did this talk, and it's on video for people if they want to go see. Just type in "Eating Our Own" David Smalley. It's on Seth Andrews, the Thinking Atheist channel. And where I quote a book by Michael Shermer, who talks about Ayn Rand and how she lost most of her followers because they were on the search for the perfect activist. And the idea behind it is just that if you say one thing that makes you questionable, people just want to attack you. You become the new focus of the attack. Mm-hmm. And I forgot where I was going with it. I started thinking about the talk. I lost my train of thought.
You said atheists are just as
more susceptible. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I think they're more susceptible because, and this is the point that that Shermer points out. Think about if you were a Christian, and I'm not going to say atheists who were born and raised as skeptics. I'm going to say people who were once religious and came out of that religious thinking. That's who I'm talking about here, which is the majority of us right now. I think 40, 50, 60 years from now, that won't be the case. But right now, the majority of atheists are ones who were once religious, at least in the United States. Once you've thought you knew something, which is that your belief is true, you're going to heaven, you have this afterlife, God, you're going to see all your dead loved ones, da-da-da. And then you come to a new way of thinking through logic and reason, and you're challenging metaphysics, and you're going, this is not true, and this is not true. And then you come to it through pure reason and logic. You feel this arrogant sense of superiority over people who still believe in what you will call fairy tales. So you have this arrogance about you now that you are among the smartest people on the planet because you don't buy that a dead person came back to life and floated up to heaven and that a donkey had a conversation with a guy. And so since you were able to overcome these things, you now feel graduated to a new level of intellect. And then you think, well, it's true. Then you think that you are smarter than all the other Christians. And then you go, well, now I am a reasonable, logical person. Once you believe everything you do is reasonable and logical, it's almost impossible to convince you that you're wrong about anything, even if it's not about religion. You could be talking to somebody about Chevy is better than Ford, and you're trying to go, no, Ford has these better numbers. If they've already convinced themselves that they came to that realization the same way they came to atheism, they're going to be the most stubborn, pig-headed jackass you've ever talked to, because they feel like every one of their decisions, even the emotional ones, they're going to feel that those decisions came from pure logic and reason, because then they can't separate which ones they came to through logic and reason from the ones that they came through from pure emotional reasons. So trying to convince someone who has convinced themselves they are completely logical and reasonable that one decision they came to is wrong because it came by emotion, not by logic and reason, they just get good at arguing around something. And smart people are especially annoying because they're really good at arguing for something that is completely false. So it's kind of a weakness or an Achilles heel for atheists,
Yeah,
that they could easily fall back into religious behavior because they think they are immune to it. They think they
absolutely.
will never be susceptible to that again, so they don't look for it. They don't analyze it. They're not skeptical that they might be acting religious. And then when you tell them they're acting religious, they just get offended and go, no, it's not like a religion at all. I came to this by reason and logic. But their arguments, their behaviors are almost mirror images of the way Christians have treated atheists for the last 50 years. And they don't see that.
Two things. I think that some people don't necessarily leave their religion because of logic, though. I think that I've seen, because, atheists get pretty preachy, too. I've seen this. I was just watching a debate between Matt Dillahunty. God, I love him. And I forgot
He's
her
a
name.
fan.
Christine. I forgot her last name. He was debating abortion.
I know what you mean. She has a very long name.
Yeah.
Starts with a K.
And it was
So
probably a
she's
long
part
time
of
ago.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, I was actually at that debate,
Oh.
and I'll tell you, I was the first person she saw when she walked off stage, and she was in tears.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I hugged her immediately. I mean, she got off stage, her eyes were
Oh my
huge,
god.
tears running down her face, and I just hugged her, and I was like, "It's okay. You
Hmm.
did the best you could. Maybe it's time to rethink your position, but don't worry about it." She should not have taken that debate.
Yeah.
She
It.
just shouldn't have. I think her and Matt could have debated just about anything, and that would have been her feeling
Mhm.
leaving there because it was overwhelming.
I
She had
bet.
never done a debate before, and Matt had done probably 50 by then.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like
Just
she held her
unfair.
own. I feel like she held her own, but it was someone in the audience when it came time for questions. It was a woman who just immediately, it was like you could hear it in her voice how upset she was with Kristen for just having the position she had. And she didn't. I had to stop the video and just sit there and gather myself for a minute, because all I was thinking was, just ask a question and move on. We don't need to know about your life story right now, because we're not at that kind of place. This is time for questions, not times for you attacking somebody for something that they said that they, you probably misinterpreted, and so I think atheists get super preachy too, which is what brings me to, every I don't think every atheist is a skeptic, and I don't think that every person who comes to atheism got there through logic. I think that maybe sometimes they go back and listen to people like you and Matt and Seth even, and they think, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense too, but I think for some people, originally it was more like it made them feel terrible, so they didn't want to, they just left, which is fine, but I wish they wouldn't stop there. I wish they would acknowledge, this makes me feel terrible, because there were emotional aspects to me leaving too. That was, some of those emotional things were the kickstart of me starting to ask questions, but it wasn't what made me leave. It wasn't what made me leave. It was just what made me kind of avoid it for a while. It was logic that brought me back to it and helped me kind of deconstruct it. So I would say that I think that atheists get preachy too, and I think that part of the reason a lot of us are so bad at dealing with that arrogance within ourselves is because we didn't come to it logically in the first place. And second of all,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah,
That's a good point.
I remember talking to somebody about this, and a lot of the things that some Christians will say, that they'll just kind of rattle it off and expect it to be said and done, but they'll say, atheism is, they're a new religion too, they're religious too. And my first instinct is always to be like, no, it's not a religion. It's that doesn't make any sense. But I think now that I'm thinking about it, maybe what they mean is what we're talking about right now, which is when they get into that same exact mindset that the Christians who say that recognize it in their church. So like, yeah, well, you're a religion too, because I see that, I see that in my church all the time, and you're doing the same exact thing. So maybe that's what they mean when they say atheism is just a new religion now, because I think it's
about half and half. I think half and half. I think the ones that are really plugged in to what's going on in the atheist community and how politically divisive it's been, I think that those who say that are spot on, especially the Christian listeners of my show and the ones who are paid Christians. They get it. They will say that is definitely religious behavior. Yeah. And a lot of times they'll say the way atheists are acting are the reasons why I left my church and just have a personal relationship with God. They'll say that type of behavior freaks me out. And that's why they're fans of mine, because I'll call out that behavior, whether it's on my side or theirs. The other side of this is the other half of those people don't know anything about what's going on in the atheist community and honestly just believe that those people exist too. And
that atheism is what? I lost you for a second. That atheism is what?
That they honestly believe that atheism is a religion.
Yeah.
Those people do exist. In fact, I had a guy tell me one time, it was back when I was still full-time job while I was juggling my show before it all took off. And the guy he walks up to me and he says, I hear you're an atheist. And I said, I am. I would love to talk to you about it. And he goes, nah, no thanks. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And he just walked away. And I was like, wait. What do you mean? He's like, no, you're not supposed to talk about that at work. I'm like, well, you can't just say that shit to me and then walk off. What? I don't have faith.
With a grenade and then left.
Yeah, you do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Just like, that is one of my most infuriating things. Like in Facebook, I had to basically get away from it. I don't even do Facebook anymore because they throw these bombs and then walk off. Like they'll post, I'm not trying to get in a debate with you, but you have no morals without God. Bye. And then they just try to bounce, and you're like, ah! And if you try to challenge, it's like, look, don't start a debate here. No, what you want is a one-way preaching ticket to say whatever the hell you want, and I'm not supposed to say anything in return. Not okay with me. It happened. But they honestly believe that in order to be an atheist, you have to profess a belief that God does not exist and that everything happened by, quote, accident.
Yeah.
And then they call that a belief as though it's a positive assertion, and then they call that atheism. And it's just the misunderstanding. And so then they call that a belief because they think we've made some sort of positive affirmation that we know there is no God and we know exactly how everything happened and the Big Bang and we worship Neil deGrasse Tyson. The last part is true. I kind of do. The rest of it, total bullshit. But if all that were true, they would think that it's a religion, and I get that. It just stems from their misunderstanding of what it means to be an atheist.
Yeah, I think that coupled with, I don't know if they're going to church and their pastors or their preachers are telling them certain things about atheists or what they believe, probably. But I had a really good friend of mine on my show, and I didn't really push back a lot because I'm still kind of nervous about doing that kind of thing. Still trying to kind of feel out what I want to be as a host. But she was talking about, I brought her on because she shared a video of Richard Dawkins and I think what's his first name? Krauss? Lawrence Krauss. Yeah, Lawrence Krauss, Richard Dawkins, and then it would cut to that video of them talking about evolution and the Big Bang. It would cut to the audience laughing at them, so it looked like the audience was laughing at them, and then they would cut to a street interviews of people who were, I guess, atheists. They never really said that, but it was kind of just a straw man of the atheist position on the Big Bang and on evolution and things like that. It was trying to make us look like idiots, right? So I commented on it, and I was like, hey, you should come on my show and talk about it. She said, I'd love to. And when she got here, she said that she likes to understand other views. So she watches videos like that. She watches, what was that Netflix documentary about?
The unbelievers.
No, it was this guy going and talking to a bunch of creationist scientists about why we should believe creationism is real. And all I was thinking was, you go to Christians to learn about atheism? And at the end of the show, I said, "Do you have any questions for atheists?" And she said, "Are you lonely?" And I said, "This," and she didn't, and I had not yet stated any of my positions on it. But at the end, I said, "Well, speaking as an atheist, I will say no. I'm not generally a miserable wreck." And I think it kind of took her by surprise. I probably should have just said it in the beginning that I'm an atheist and that that's why this is interesting to me. But it was surprising that she said, and she didn't even realize that she was saying it, right? She didn't even realize how that sounded, that she said, "I like to learn about other people's perspectives by watching videos that make them look like fools, by watching documentaries that don't show their side," you know?
So here's a note, and I think a lot of your listeners are college students, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah.
So here,
almost 100%.
if you're gonna write anything down from this conversation, I know you college folks love notes. Here's what I want you to write down. Write down Rappaport's rules. Rappaport's rules. Just look that up. I'll give you a summary, but it's important that you look up the actual rules. Essentially, it is rules for argumentation, rules for having a dialectic versus dialogue. Not just talking back and forth, but somewhat of a disagreement in that you truly want to understand the other side.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a true dialectic back and forth, here's your position, here's my position. One of the most important parts of Rappaport's rules, which Dan Dennett talks about in, oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of Dan's book where he covers it. Ever since he stopped following me on Twitter, I got butthurt and quit mentioning it. What is it? I don't remember. I can pull it up before the conversation ends if you want. But if you look up Rappaport's rules, you'll find it. Essentially, it says that before you're ready to present an argument against someone's case, you need to be able to state that person's argument back to them in a way in which he or she would say, "I wish I would have worded it that way."
Mm-hmm.
So not just in a way that they would agree, but in a way that they would go, "Oh, you've worded that so good." My own argument. Once you can do that, and the person goes, "Yes, that is my belief," then you're ready to address it. The problem is that rarely happens. And it's the same thing. This piece right here, Carson, ties everything together, which is why I think you're a much better host than you even give yourself credit for. This piece of you talking about this woman who watched this video, and what you're talking about is actually a Ray Comfort video, where Ray Comfort, also known as the Banana Man, goes around and takes video of atheists asking them questions, and then he chops it up and puts it back together in completely ridiculous. So as much as I engage people in debates, I will warn every atheist, especially if you're in the Southern California area. He does it a lot at Venice Beach, like that. If you ever see Ray Comfort out in public with a camera and you think, "I'm going to be the one to fix it," you're going to answer all of his good. The problem is he is not going, when he edits the video, he's not going to put your answers with the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to intentionally ask you questions to make you say so atheists are going to say, and then he's going to ask other questions later, and he's going to swap them and make you sound completely absurd on video. He even did it to PZ Myers, who, as an activist for a political perspective, PZ and I are he is so far left, I don't think he can see straight. But his science, what he's done scientifically, I don't want anyone to ever take from him. He's a professor, and he's done a lot of, he's the creator of the Ferengula blog. He's very well known in the science community. PZ Myers caught him saying some stuff on camera and then edited in a way that even made PZ Myers look like he didn't understand basic science. It's all stupid. And so what your guest was doing is the same thing that the folks on the far left are doing. They are, if you don't know who I'm about, Christians who watch Christian videos that make atheists look stupid in order to get the atheist viewpoint, or if I'm talking about those folks that we call liberals who are on the far left who are speaking on behalf of other people and making their arguments look ridiculous. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you can still follow along. Either group will straw man the hell out of your position, restate your position in a way that you don't agree with it, and then make you sound ridiculous for holding a view you don't actually hold, and then publicly smear you for that ridiculous view that you don't agree. Don't even know when you get ready to respond, rather to say, that's not even my argument, or try to somehow point out that what they're doing is corrupt. And this is why I say it's so beautiful that you bring this up here, because it ties this whole conversation together. It's the basic argumentation example of not following Rappaport's rules. Show didn't go ask an atheist, what is your position on this? And then when they hear the answer, when she heard the answer, she didn't state back correctly. Your argument is this. And then let that atheist say, yes, that is to the best of my knowledge the atheist position on this. And then argument against that valid atheist position. That's not what she did. She watched a video of Ray Comfort editing and chopping a bunch of crazy stuff together, making people sound ridiculous, and then she makes up her mind that that new straw man is what an atheist is, and then proceeds to laugh at it and make fun of this ridiculous concept, when she never really took the time to go to the source and be able to state that argument back to a person who actually holds it. And our friends on the left are doing the exact same thing. I am constantly strawmanned. I'll tell you, just the other day, there was a thing that happened. I basically said something like on the left about a chant that I saw on a post where they were chanting, all cops are racist, you better face it. All cops are racist, you better face it. And I said, this is embarrassing to me. Is racism in the judicial system is different from saying that every human being who is a racist. And by straw manning every policeman in America, you're just making us look ridiculous, irrational, understand argumentation. And so when I said that on Twitter, the backlash started in on me that I'm a Trump supporter, which I'm the furthest from a Trump supporter. And so they started to say things to me like, oh no, I can stop then. Can you hear me right now, Carson?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Okay. You stopped for a second. It was weird because you were like going in and out, like it would stop and then catch up to the third word you said. Is your connection okay?
I'm looking at it. It shows 5 bars. My Wi-Fi is literally right there, and I have super strong internet. Let me go see if somebody else is streaming. Hold on a second.
Okay. It might be mine. Sorry, guys. He was cutting out a little bit. So I sent him a message. I'll do that while he's talking. I'll send him something just so because I don't like to interrupt him. Yeah, it's definitely mine. It's definitely mine. God. It's mine. It's my thing. Let me disconnect real quick and reconnect.
Yeah, no, I've got Talissa's the only one here, and she wasn't streaming anything, or
it's mine.
Nothing was shared.
It's mine.
It is?
It's mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, damn, I don't know what part was cutting out. I can restart. And by the way, is this microphone?
Yeah, it's perfect. Is it what? I can
Okay.
hear you fine. Yeah, I can hear you fine. Everybody can hear you fine.
No, I'm saying when I do this, can you hear it?
No. Are you tapping on it?
Can you hear that? Yeah. Well, that could be a problem. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Can you hear? You still there?
I can hear you.
Where's Where is Discord? Where's Discord?
Can you see me?
There you are. Yeah, I can see now.
Okay.
So what about this? Can you hear this?
No.
You can't hear that.
Now I can hear it. Yep. It's kind of, the sound is kind of like behind a little bit. It buffers a little bit.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure that it's a good sound. You're not getting the, but because I went into my settings on Discord and I selected my USB mixer,
Okay.
but it looks like it may have come unplugged. So I was just double checking.
I think it's mine. I think it's probably because of the storm out there. It'll go between red and green. It'll go to like 1 bar to 3 to 1 bar to 2 to 3. So that's what it is.
Okay, that's what's going on.
So that's, well, I warned you guys. But keep going. About about the all cops are racist, you better face it, and it was, you said it embarrassed you.
So whenever I started tweeting about this protest where they were saying all cops are racist, you better face it, I was like, they're just making us look bad. It's a straw man. Instead of addressing what actually happened or what I was saying, or that I am a liberal who's embarrassed by people straw manning the entire police force in America, the response was someone else commented, talking to the person I was talking to, saying, "Oh, don't worry about him. He's just trying to jump supporter.
He's just what?
He's just trying to justify why he's a Trump supporter."
Oh. Wow.
They were saying that me saying not all cops are racist is me justifying why I'm a Trump supporter. And I'm not. I want to make sure that comes through this connection issue. I am not a Trump supporter at all. And the furry Cheeto. He drives me insane. And I'm
glad I got furry Cheeto for sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's did that person follow Rappaport's rules? Absolutely. Take time to understand my argument. He didn't care. He's a super lefty who just wants to end using the word Trump and get 3 more extra likes on his stupid ass Twitter comment. That's all it comes down to for him.
Yeah.
Nothing in reality matters anymore when you base your score and how many people like you off of social media clicks.
Yeah.
Real life has gone out the window. Real discourse, real dialogue, and a real nuance is dead when your focus is how many likes can you get on your Twitter comment.
Yeah.
And so that type of speaking on my behalf, saying that I'm a Trump supporter when I'm not, ignoring my actual problem that I have, which is, look, we can all be liberal and not believe cops are racist, right? Not every cop anyway. Sure, there are racist cops, but all cops are racist? Mm-hmm. I mean, I get the undertone of, it's this idea that there's this judicial system, and if you're a cog in the wheel then you're a part of a racist machine. I get it. But you are literally a police officer in America by saying every cop is a racist, and it's a straw man, ridiculous comment. And so by me saying that I don't agree with that, and they're not following Rappaport's rules by being able to state my position back to me before they can argue against it, they just insult me, call me a Trump supporter, and move on. And that's why we're not getting anywhere. It is. I mean, it clearly is.
Yeah.
And so that's,
in some circles.
That's how they are operating right now, which is why I can't take them seriously.
Yeah.
It's not like he had a valid argument that changed my mind, and I had to go, oh, well, you put it that way. Let me rethink. It's just silly. It makes me just look at this person as though they're a 12-year-old with a Twitter account, and I just laugh at it and go, okay. It makes me not want to engage anymore because it's pointless.
Yeah, for sure.
So that woman that came on your show sort of did the same thing. She allowed this other video from Ray Comfort to make up her mind as to what an atheist believes. Mm-hmm. And not following Rappaport's rules gets us all in trouble, and it makes atheists a lot of times behave in a way that seems very dogmatic.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let me move on to one of these questions I had for you. So we haven't even gotten into your story yet, or how you. I mean, you told us you gave a little bit of a teaser about how Dogma Debate started and kind of the. I almost made a fetus joke there about your show growing up in the womb, but I won't. I can't, it's not forming, so I'm gonna move on. Um, what were you a Christian before? Tell us about your story. Tell us about um, how you came to this realization that you wanted to do this show. Like, why is it so important to you? Where did all this start for you?
Yeah, what fascinates me right now is when I meet somebody who has also read the Bible and considered these tough issues and still believes it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
That's
100%.
that's really what's so intriguing to me. Like whenever you said a few minutes ago that it started out of genuine curiosity for you, that's exactly where I started, Carson, and I want you to know that. And I think it has to come from that. Otherwise, if you're like, oh, I'm going to do this show that gets lots of downloads, if that's your focus, you're just going to be chasing some, unknowable metric that
Yeah.
it can't be that. It's got to be organic. It's got to be real.
Yeah.
And for me, that genuine curiosity of how do you function day in and day out at your job and also believe that you have an angel that floats invisibly over your head that makes things happen throughout your day? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work for you? So sitting down and talking with these people and being truly intrigued by it, um, it lets the walls come down. It's not about a fight anymore. It's not about a
Yeah.
debate. I don't have anything to win. I want to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was a Christian. I was a believer for most of my life. I was baptized at the age of 15, and it just felt so official that I was like, I feel like I've been given the jersey and I don't know any of the plays. And I know the team name, but I don't understand why the team's named that way. And people are going to ask me questions, and I don't know how to defend it. I don't know how to respond to it. I feel like I've signed up, to be a Kirby vacuum salesman, and I've never used one. So I'm going to go door knocking and say what exactly? Whatever my youth pastor told me to say in this pamphlet. And
Well, that's generally the idea. I feel like.
yeah. And so I was door knocking, and this woman slammed a door in my face and said, actually, she goes, honey, you need Jesus.
Oh.
And slammed the door in my face. And then I thought, what if she's right? What if the correct version of Jesus is on the other side of the door, and I'm telling people about a false prophet and sending people to hell?
That's intense.
What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not good enough to wear the Christian label? I don't know enough. I don't behave good enough. What if? There's all these questions. I feel like I was hired for a job and I had no training. All I knew was the company name and the colors, and that was it. I didn't know anything else. And so I was like, this is really stupid for me to be door knocking, supposedly soul winning, and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I'm a kid. And so I started reading the Bible after I was baptized, and that led me on a journey of I've got to get close to God. I've got to figure this out. And I got so close, I saw that there wasn't one, and that we needed to take care of each other out there looking out for us. And that grew my humanism, and I felt so much more empowered when I no longer believed in an afterlife. This life suddenly became much more important, and I suddenly started feeling much closer to strangers, connected with them on a primate level, on a biological level, on an evolutionary level, connecting with plants and animals and understanding where we all come from organically, and just seeing somebody in need and pulling over and going, I'm going to help you out. I don't know you. I don't care what your faith is. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care, if you like men or women or whatever. None of that matters. You're a human being. There's not a God floating out there that's going to solve your problems, but I'm here right now. What can I do for you? And it made me a drastically better person that no longer looked at this life as a practice run.
Yeah.
And so that's been my journey in a few seconds anyway.
Yeah. It's funny because I never let them baptize me when I came to the church kind of on my own. I mean, I was Catholic, so I was baptized technically at birth, but at the church that my mom is still a part of, that I used to be a part of, there was always, probably still is, this intense pressure to get baptized. And I think maybe once my mom looked at me and she was like, "Do you want to get baptized?" And I was like, "No." But I was a Christian, and I was in it. But I was still, there was a part of me that was like,
kudos to your mom for that, because most people don't even get the option.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was definitely
confirmation's coming up in 3 weeks. Like, get your shit together.
Yeah, it was definitely technically up to us, but there was a lot of urgency and a lot of pressure to get up there and do it. And I just didn't. It's funny because when I think back on it now, there was this voice that was like, I don't know if I believe this. I don't know if I believe it strong enough to go underwater for it, literally, you know? And so, it's not that I'm afraid of water, but it just seems, it's a very physical experience.
At this point?
No.
Were you still Catholic?
No. No.
I was gonna say they were just gonna sprinkle you anyway.
This is like they call themselves non-denominational, but there's a lot of Catholic kind of and Methodist kind of mixed in there. So, which is funny because those aren't really alike at all. But I'm telling you, there are both Methodist and Catholic elements in this church. But yeah, I would not let them baptize me, and it's so funny because I wish somebody had been like, "Why not?" You know. And I mean, I probably wouldn't have had a good answer for them. It probably just would have been, I don't know, I just don't want to. Probably because a lot of it was probably because I don't like being pressured into doing that kind of thing, and so I really was pushing back against the feeling that I had to, you know. And so they would never pressure children to do it. I'll give them that. They never pressured children to do it. Any child they've ever baptized I believe has come up to them and asked them to do it.
Well, they're definitely not Mormon. That's for damn sure.
No, they are not.
Mormons will.
Yeah.
Mormons push their kids to do that all the time.
Really? I mean, maybe some of them did. I wouldn't know, but I know that at least, you know, the pastor's daughter, when he baptized her, I know he wouldn't pressure his children into doing something like that. So
you had a pastor at one point that you were going to talk to about coming on the show, right? Mm-hmm. Did he decline that?
On my show or on yours?
No, he was going to come on my show. I remember us talking about it, and you were like, "I would love to have my old pastor on your show." And I was like, he never. Please tell him I'd love to.
Yeah, no, he never. I had texted him about it a long time ago, and I had invited him to come here, but he declined. And so instead I sent him a text and said, "I know you declined to come do an actual debate here. I'm sure that you're busy. I just thought that maybe this would be a better, more convenient platform for you." And so I told him about your show, and I still haven't received an answer. And that was probably half a year ago, probably probably a year ago is when I did that. But yeah, so I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if it's because he doesn't want to or because he's not comfortable with the idea, but he used to love it. I mean, I don't really know what's happened, but I haven't talked to him in a while, so.
Send him a message for me that just says, David Smalley says 1 Peter 3:15, and leave it at that, and see if he says anything back to that.
Okay. That's funny because his name is actually David, so I'm going to be really excited if you guys got to talk.
That'd
be really excited.
Yeah.
But I honestly do think that he would bring something interesting to the table, because he was kind of raised, his parents, I think, I won't tell you too much about him, but his parents, I believe, were and are still atheists, and he went to Bible college and was converted while he went there. And so I have had him on my show before. He Skyped with me way early on last year, because I'd sent him a question and he addressed it in church, and then I said, okay, let's talk about it on my show. And so he came on and he did talk to me. So if you want, I can send you the link to kind of hear what he's about and how he talks.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, if he's willing to come on the show, then it's worth the time for me to do that research.
Yeah.
If he's not going to talk to me, I mean, I guess I would, but I would still be interested.
I'll still ask. Yeah, I'll still bug him a little bit.
I just have so much going on. I really don't do it unless I know there's going to be a reason.
It makes sense. That's understandable. But
I gotta say though, I don't know. Knowing how you talk to people, I would love to hear you talking with your former pastor. Do you get into a little bit of a debate with
Yeah,
him about
absolutely.
issues? Oh well, then
Yeah.
yeah, send that to me. That's gonna
Yeah,
be
I
fun no
will.
matter
I
what.
will. Yeah, we talk about Noah's flood and the logic of it,
Ooh,
and yeah, and
okay.
because he what he did was he did a sermon on it, and I watched the sermon and I took, you know, ferocious notes while I was watching his sermon, and then I said, you should, yeah, yeah, and I've yeah, my professor would probably be
Well, then yes, I want to
jealous.
hear this because
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of yours. So
Oh.
I need to hear. I can't wait to hear you
Oh
talking with your
God.
pastor.
Okay, well I'll send it to you. Damn. Okay. Um,
Awesome.
let me get to some more questions because I know you're a busy, tired man.
Yeah, it's
Um,
okay.
so,
I've cleared my schedule
oh, good.
just for you, so
Wow,
you're good.
wow, that's a lot of pressure. Do
Yeah.
you have? What
So
have
this
you
better not
learned?
suck.
I I hope it doesn't, dear God. What do
Dear
you? What
God.
would you? What would you say you've learned so far just doing these talks? I mean, you already had obviously a solid character and integrity like as you started this, like that's already apparent, but what would you say you've actually learned having these debates, having these discussions with people who may or may not sit across from you and tell you that you're going to hell, or that they think you're going to hell, you know, not aggressively maybe, but what have you learned from these people, from these Christians, from pastors and people you've spoken to, guests you've had on your show?
Yeah, I've learned so much from so many people doing this show. Um, I would
You
say
have 15
on
seconds. I love doing
on
that to you because you do it to your guests all the time.
I do. I was gonna say that's such a dogma debate thing to do with a guest. I love it.
Oh, I'm so glad I got to turn that on you.
I would say the biggest takeaway I think is that these people really do care about you. I mean, they honestly believe of them. Most of them. I can't say all because there are probably a handful. I could count on one hand that I think are just conniving con artists that are just despicable human beings. Um, the vast majority honestly do care about saving your soul, and they care about me not going to hell,
Hmm.
and they care about all of my listeners, and they feel this immense pressure of if I can just if I can get David Smalley, this atheist podcaster with all these followers, to change his mind on his shit, how great would that be for Jesus?
Hmm.
How many of those thousands will follow David to Christ?
Hmm.
So they don't, you know, it's not it's not just a chess game. It's not
Hmm.
just well, you said A, so I say B, then I serve up C, so you can say D. Do that. The trained Christian apologist who just spit out theodicies and answers, I don't know that they care as much. I think they're more concerned with impressing their buddies from Bible college that they're going to email the link to. I don't know that they're so much concerned with saving money uh, as they are not looking like a complete idiot on the show when their friends listen for Bible school. Um, but the Christians, the genuine Christians who come on and inquire about how could you be an atheist when you know the sunset is so beautiful and your daughter is so amazing, and
Hmm.
what are you going to do about your daughter's soul? Are you going to let her be a Christian? Those people really do care, and um, it's hard to be upset with someone who is telling you you're wrong out of pure love. And when I listen to them and then I hear them say that they used to, beat their kids, I want to be angry at them. I want to be like, did you not take the time to research? Did you not, I have to stop and just say, in a weird, twisted, messed up way, they honestly thought they were doing the best for their kid. They thought they were showing tough love so that Satan didn't get a hold of them. They thought they were waging this war against this supernatural entity with all these magical powers, and they thought if they could just straighten your behavior that they wouldn't, and so when unfortunately it has a lot of negative psychological effects, especially in the LGBT community. As you're aware of the high suicide rates and the high depression rates, the disconnected
Anxiety.
families that we've tried to help a lot of young teens that were a part of the LGBT community or just young atheists find new places to live and raise money and things like that on the show. But I guess it's like the biggest thing I've learned is that they're not hateful. Like they don't see that they're the bad guy. Like
Well, yeah.
if
Yeah.
if someone breaks into your apartment, they know they don't belong there, right? They know that that's your place. They're wearing the mask. They're there to steal from you. They know that they're the bad guy in the situation, and you know you're the good guy. And so it's clear as to who's supposed to run away and who's supposed to stay, and who's supposed to be there and who's not. They don't view themselves as the bad guy. They look around and go, "What are you doing in my God's house?" Right? So they see themselves as being a warrior for good, for Jesus. And so they don't think they're bad. They don't think they're wrong. And the harm that we see that they inflict on their children, they see it as tough love. They don't see it as harmful. So when we start off saying you hurt your kids, they're going, "Yeah, didn't your kid fall off a bicycle? So you hurt your kid too, but yeah, they learned how to ride a bike and that was good for them in the long run, right?" So I guess the biggest takeaway is, and I've got a lot of things, tons of things I've learned over the having scientists on my show to having, the political discussions of having liberals on my show and then watching those liberals slide further to the left and start behaving more like the right than I think. There have been things I've learned there. There's things I've learned about the right that I once used to straw man the right, and I do. There's a lot that I've learned. But when you first asked the question, the big thing that jumped out at me is just how much the Christians who come on my show really do love people and want to save their souls.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because this is going to sound probably condescending a little bit, but I don't mean it that way. It's really sad that that's true, that they really do see the world like that there are supernatural forces that are battling for our soul, and that it's this really, because it does, like you said, it does cause a lot of negative psychological effects even within them. I think that anxiety, I used to see somebody about that when I was a Christian, and my therapist was actually a Christian too, and he helped me acknowledge the anxiety about my faith that was arising in me because of my my sexuality that conflicted with those beliefs that people were kind of imposing on me as loving Christians. Of course, it's really sad, and it's hard to hear, and it's hard to acknowledge because it's so sad. But it's also super frustrating, just because I think the most angry I've ever been listening to your show was when you had on you've had on several women so far, even though most of them are men. But it was this one particular woman. I don't remember her name. I think she was Methodist. It's not Kathy. God, I love Kathy. It's not Kathy. She was not a pastor, but she was, I think, part of the Methodist Church, and her pastor is a woman. And you had repeatedly even made her read out loud the scriptures about women being allowed to teach. You read out loud the scriptures about women being able to be sold as slaves, but not the boys. I mean, you read out loud all these things that conflicted with what her beliefs were. And in the end, it just seemed like she was stuck, but she wouldn't take that next step of, oh, you're right. I didn't really think about that. It was always, they always go back to, well, it was in a different time. You got to understand the context. You got to understand the culture that they were in at the time. And God was just trying to soften the blow, I guess, of sexism and misogyny. He was just kind of trying to ease them into that. But, you know, everything else was
Carson, I get that same exact level of frustration.
Yeah.
When I talk with a gay man or
Yep.
a lesbian who's
Yep.
also a Christian.
I actually plan on bringing on one of my gay man friends who's a Christian, and it's gonna be fun because we're both gay, but one of us is an atheist and one of us is Christian. But yeah,
Right.
go ahead.
You're going to experience that same thing. I can just warn you now. It's that same level of frustration. It's almost a kidnapping victim defend their kidnapper.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I've referred to it multiple times. Yeah, I've referred to it multiple times as a Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
And they just start to go, no, we needed this. We needed this to happen. Times I end up in the same situation when there's an African American Christian, and I start talking about look at the symbolism, the hands clasped together, bowing on your knees, head submissive, slave type role that Christians have been, and slaves obey your earthly masters. How are you so pro-Christian and so anti-slavery when look at the verses, look at these verses. Anytime I talk to women, anyone in the LGBT community, or anyone who's black who is still a Christian, I get this feeling that like I'm trying to help. Part of your plight and this comes from the religious indoctrination of who you are as a person, and how it's okay to treat you less than a person, and you're defending that worldview. It's you get this. I don't know if it's probably what I've ever felt during my show.
It's probably the what?
Like the most hopeless.
Oh yeah.
I've ever felt during my show when someone like is a victim being told you will never have a certain level of authority, you will never be allowed to church, you're never allowed to teach a man anything. The man is the head of your household as Jesus is the head of the church. You're being held under this. It's not even a glass ceiling. It's concrete. It's not like you can't even know exactly where your limits are. And here's what you'll never be better than. As a matter of fact, in the Mormon church, when a boy turns 12, what's called the Melchizedek priesthood, he has reached a level that his mother never will at 12 years old. So you have these different religious beliefs where these women have these clear ceilings, and then they come on my show and defend the thing that is actively oppressing them.
Yeah.
When the victim of the oppression starts to defend the oppressor, I get this hopeless feeling like, what am I doing?
Well, if
I
anybody else said
it, grab you out of that.
Yeah.
What?
If anyone else were saying these things, they would absolutely be so far from it. So they would probably be faster at preaching about how wrong and disgusting these things are, faster than even I could probably. But when it's God and when it comes from God, oh, well, you have to understand where they're coming from. You know, there's one time one of my teachers in high school defended someone making a victim blaming kind of rape suggestive comment about what woman's, I think she was he saw a picture of a really curvy girl our age and said something about something like, this is why women get raped or something. And this teacher of mine, who professed herself as a feminist, by the way, said when this guy was confronted about it, she went to his defense and said, you have to understand the context of the situation. And I was just thinking, what fucking context? In what context is that appropriate? Is that true? You know, that doesn't make any sense. But then when you put God's name on it, there's a context you have to understand. Well, you know, he didn't mean it like that. You know, up actually means down. You know, it's just insane that it depends on who said it. And I see the same thing in politics. You know, There was someone kind of did a jokey thing that I was gonna do research on, but I kind of left it there. Someone copied.
Then that's very Dogma Debate of you as well. I was gonna research it, but fuck it.
Look, I didn't research it. I didn't research it because I researched something else. So leave me the hell alone. Someone copy and pasted a bunch of quotes that Donald Trump said and put it under Hillary's name, and then all of a sudden, people were like, "Well, if Hillary said it, you know," and it's like, no. If Hillary really said that, I have questions, you know, like, and so, and there were more people who were also like, see, Hillary's racist, and they were Trump supporters, and actually was like, actually, Trump said this. So, you know, that cognitive dissonance that happens when you put someone else's name on it. I think it's a human thing. I don't think it's necessarily a religious thing. It's definitely a dogmatic thing, though.
Let me tell you, it's a confirmation bias as well, and it's what's known as top-down logic. And top-down logic, for your listeners who don't know, have you ever talked about top-down logic on your show?
No, I haven't. But I am a psychology major, so be careful that you're not mansplaining to me what top-down logic is.
Mansplaining, I love it.
Go ahead, explain it for our listeners.
I'll explain it for all the listeners who need the mansplaining.
Okay.
No, it's
so glad I got
so
to
it's
tell
basically
David Smalley
and there's this for my show that the one we just did with the flat earther, because apparently I guess I mansplained to him as well. He kept doing
I don't think it counts if it's well, maybe it does.
I mean, if it has to.
Yeah, you're
because
right.
what happened was he kept saying, like, I asked a simple question about why during a lunar eclipse do we see the shadow of the Earth on the moon and it's spherical, and he just went, I don't know. And I said, okay, good. I'm glad that you said that. The audience just fell in love with you. But why doesn't that change your view? Why can't you just say, well, clearly there's the shadow of our planet? And he just said, because I already believe the Earth is flat. And I went, well, that's top-down logic. You're starting with your answer that the Earth is flat, and anything that doesn't comport, just fill in the gaps on the way down, and that's how you get to your answer. And then the confirmation bias steps in whenever you head to the belief you've already accepted. You just throw that out and go, I don't know, but the Earth is still flat. That's not the way we make progress toward anything. And I had to sort of explain that to him, the bad way of doing logic. And that's the same sort of thing that we experience when you have a woman this way. They won't talk about whether it's good or bad. They won't talk about whether it's just or fair. They will just say, this is what God, that's just what God wanted. So who am I to change it? I'm the creature, not the creator. Who am I to challenge him? Right? And then we have to go, well, what if he didn't want that? What if this was influenced by human beings and men who tried to mansplain the entire universe to everybody with this book? What if that's what happened? And then you're getting this idea from it that you're not allowed to have these certain questions or positions of authority. Your brain involved in challenging how you're being treated. Well, then you sound like a nut to them, and they go, oh, come on, this clearly came from God. And then you end up in this cycle of trying to get them to understand that they've started with the idea that the Bible came from God. So anything below that has to fall in line. And if it doesn't, they throw it out because of the confirmation bias. And I think that's the biggest struggle both of us face as hosts of shows like this, is getting people to understand they're doing logic wrong.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I forgot what I was going to say. How frustrating. Something about confirmation bias, probably.
You were probably going to womansplain something to me.
Yep. And I've lost it. Oh well, I'm sure you already know it anyway, so I guess it's fine. It'll come back, I'm sure, but
it will. You know where all your thoughts live. when you're doing a show like this, all of the thoughts end when you all live in the stop button on the recorder. Because as soon as you're done recording and you hit stop, you go, oh, shit.
I remember what it
That's
was.
what
I remember what it was. It's funny because I fucking wrote it down too. And I just I couldn't find it. Okay. Another thing I was going to say, something I really appreciate, the things that I've heard Matt Dillahunty do it and I've heard you do it on your show too, is that you get like super meta analytical with your guests and you just straight out tell them what's going on right now and why they can't seem to rationalize. So you'll just say, you're having trouble with this right now because of your confirmation bias, or you're having trouble rationalizing or reconciling what this book says with what you feel and believe and know to be true. So you're just dodging it, or you're just blocking it, or you're dismissing it, or whatever, finding some excuse, going back to something irrelevant. I love that you guys don't just let them go on with it, that you'll stop them right where it's happening and point it out to them, because I think that it's not. Go ahead.
Let me just say, when you hear me do that, I think I'm glad that you appreciate it. But if I could analyze myself, I would say that I'm making a mistake when only because I would rather word it as a question, right? I would rather say, do you think maybe you're having trouble dealing with this because of your confirmation bias? And when they say no, tell me why. Mm-hmm. And you're right, though. I'm still holding on to that. Sometimes I guess I don't regret just flat out telling them. They've been super blunt with me, and we have that kind of open relationship, mm-hmm. Back and forth, that open dialogue relationship. I guess in a perfect world, I would always word that as a question, is what I'm trying to say. To lead them through questioning, through lead them through determining on their own that they realize they're dodging the question because of a confirmation bias. I may stop and ask, why didn't you answer my question? Mm-hmm. Why do you think you're having trouble answering? And the problem is, I don't want to interrupt, but when they realize they're in a situation like that, they want to just start babbling to get away from the situation. And I have to say, stop. You never answered the question. And I have to keep bringing them back to that point. And I think that's what you're talking about. So I appreciate that you appreciate it. But I feel like if I time, it will come out as a question, not a statement of how illogical they're being.
Well, sure. It's not the way you do it. It's just that you're doing it at all, because I think it's super important for anybody in any kind of conversation, if you see it happening, to help them become aware of it, not to be like, you have confirmation bias and I don't, but just to say, hey, this is something that all of us have, and I'm seeing it, what?
Why did you say that? I tried to type it to be all slick. I was asking you. I was typing to you. Wait, what?
Shut up. I don't even know what that means. Okay, take a restroom break. We can take a break right now. I'll just
I was gonna let you finish your statement and then say,
let me wrap this up real quick.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I think it's important to be like, hey, this is a human thing. We all get to that point in the conversation where we either realize that we're wrong and don't want to backpedal, so we're like that walrus in Happy Feet 2. You must go forward, can't go back.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Philosophy from Happy Feet 2. I love it.
Yes. I never forget it, actually, because I have a problem with it too. I can be very stubborn and pick-headed sometimes. I hope Stephanie's not listening, but because I don't want to have to apologize to her later. But I think it's important to be able to do it, because to point out to them, because I think it's helpful. That's what I'm just trying to say. Go to the bathroom. It's helpful.
Okay. Well, in my stead, you can interview Talissa. Come here.
Okay. All right, cool. Let me
Yep.
check to make sure this is still recording because the computer will go to the bathroom. Do what you need
Headphones
to
on?
do.
Only. Nobody. Everybody else will go.
Oh,
Oh.
wasn't expecting this. Hello.
Hi, Talissa. Good to see you.
Hey.
You probably don't remember me at all. I was at that one of those rallies that with the helicopter ride. You pulled my name out of a hat. We talk about it all the time, David and I.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. Cool. I forgot. I totally forgot you were home. I know he went and checked to see if you were streaming something because we were having connection difficulties, but I totally forgot that you were home. How's it going?
It's good right now. I'm just chilling in the back because I don't want to disturb any, like, the online stuff, so I don't really try to get on my phone. It's hard to.
Yeah. Wow. You have talent to not get on your phone for however long David is on the radio. Wow. He's doing a show.
It's
wow.
difficult. I remember. I remember, like, back at the old, whenever you do like 4-hour shows, like him doing a show, we can't stream anything.
Wow.
Literally just staring at
Were
a
you having
wall
withdrawals?
for the longest time. Yeah.
Yeah, getting sweaty and scratching yourself. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Man, you didn't. I mean, I guess you didn't you couldn't just leave then, huh? You couldn't just go screw this. I'm gonna go across the street and look at Facebook.
I could do that, but the problem with that is, like, if they can't really check up on me, if anything. Plus, I was younger.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
It
you're talking
wasn't-
about, yeah, got you. Well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Man, wow.
I would just draw for hours. That's all I could do.
Well, I guess that's good because now you have a better sense of self-control when it comes to your phone, hopefully, right? You can be without it for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
That's true.
Good. There you go. You can leave it. I used to be able to just leave my phone at my house or in my room and not take it with me, but I can't do that anymore.
Really?
Take it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I can do that.
You can't do that? Okay. Well, I used to do
I don't
it
know.
if I was just going to be gone for a little bit. I'd be able to just leave it in my room, but I take it everywhere now. I've gotten worse.
Nice.
But
Yeah, I do that too all the time.
what a nerd.
You look like a potato.
He did. He's got such thick eyelashes. He looks like Willy Wonka or something.
I get what you're saying. And he has bushy eyebrows too.
Yeah.
They go everywhere. I'm
Yeah.
constantly, like, looking at him and just, like, putting my thumb over his eyebrow, just, like, trying to work. It just always
Take him to get
like-
a wax or something.
Oh gosh, I love that. Yes, I'm talking about you.
Did you say Bush?
We're gonna get Bush.
Sorry. What's his name? Kyle Butt. Tell him I apologize to Kyle Butt for his comment about his bush.
You said you apologized to what?
To Kyle Butt.
To his butt?
To Kyle Butt.
Butt?
Yeah. I said.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Kyle Butt.
Kyle
Oh my
Butt.
God! Did he wash his
Okay.
hands? Make sure he washes his hands.
Me and Carson and 50,000 other people.
Oh, I'm not in that joke.
No, I'm not in the
Oh.
joke.
Okay.
You should let her in the joke, jerk. All right. Thanks,
Yeah,
Talissa. Good to talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.
And if you want to continue the interview, you're more than welcome. She's way more.
She is. I agree. Can you come back, Talissa?
Yeah. She can't hear you.
Oh.
Luckily for me.
Well, I apologize
you
to
ever
Kyle
wanna
Butt
do
for your
another-
bush joke.
Cool, thanks. No, if you ever want to just like have a full interview with
With
someone
Talissa.
who's raised as an atheist, crazy broadcast world.
Wow,
is
yeah, that's true. Oh, damn. What a great opportunity that I just waved to as it passed me by. Wow.
Yeah, no, you can reconnect with her
Okay.
and do for Nutella in the middle of a show. Is that what you want? How much of the soup did you eat? I don't think you did. I'll tell you what. If you have a little bowl of the healthy soup that's left, you can have some Nutella. Well, if you're not hungry enough for Nutella.
How old is
Sorry.
Talissa? Is she 13?
She's 14.
She's 14? I always
14,
forget. She always
yeah.
seems 16.
Yeah, she always seems older,
Yeah.
except when she's begging for Nutella and being a brat.
Oh. I'm here for you, girl. Love that Nutella.
Yeah, Carson says eat the Nutella. Carson says, I'm here for you, girl. I love that Nutella. Okay.
Okay.
I don't eat it, so she just treats it as her own personal bone and just like
I do that.
ridiculous.
Don't judge.
I can't do it. It's too. Is all of this going to be part of the show? Or are you going to
Yeah.
cut all this stuff out?
No, I'm not cutting anything out
Oh wow.
unless you explicitly
Okay.
tell
No.
me to.
Oh,
And
I
then
don't
I,
care.
still might
They
not.
can get the whole behind the scenes.
Good.
Good.
Do you have any advice? We're gonna do an advice thing. Do you have any advice for Christians who want to reach out to atheists but are kind of intimidated, kind of nervous about doing something like that?
Yeah. Thank you for this. This is a good opportunity. I think
You're welcome.
looking at their social media behaviors could be a good sign to see how they're going to treat you.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind that it's not always, because when atheists post something on social media, look, we all act a little differently around our close friends,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You would say stuff in front of Stephanie that you would never say in, say, me or some of your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
You would act a little differently around your mom than your boss at work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Atheists just need to openly admit that that's what we're doing, and I do it on my show on purpose.
Mhm.
The first 30 minutes of my show, you're getting to hear atheists responding to atheists. We laugh at stuff, we have news, we bag on religion, and then when the Christian comes in the room or calls in, that all gets set aside and we have a legitimate, respectful discussion.
Mhm.
And it's not being fake or two-faced, it's showing both sides of all of our personalities. So I guess just advice to Christians would be Rappaport's rules. I go back to that. I go back to making sure you can state the atheist argument in a way that the atheist, before you're ready to respond to it. That's number one. Number two, be okay with saying, because you come into
Be
the
okay with saying
position,
what?
you have
You
to
cut out
understand,
right when you said that.
be okay with saying I don't know,
Okay.
because understand that from the atheist perspective, you're coming in saying that you have a personal relationship with the creator of the universe and that we are arrogant.
Yeah.
So there's already this imbalance of power that you think we are the arrogant one. Atheist thinks that you are the arrogant ones. So all you need to do is just not be arrogant. Be humble. Be willing to say I don't know, and follow Rappaport's rules, and try to keep it as a Socratic method, meaning rather than telling the atheist, here's your position and here's why it's wrong, I don't see how you reconcile this with this one. Can you explain that for me?
Yeah. Put it
And
like that.
finally,
Mhm.
and probably the most important, listen. Listen to the actual answer the atheist gives and respond to what the atheist actually says. Don't a straw man version that you think you can easily knock, because more than likely they're just going to point out whatever fallacy you're committing. And of course, brush up on logical fallacies. You can look them up. You can make sure that you're not committing any. And if the atheist commits them, you can call them out and keep them back on track. So I guess in my years of doing that, that's the quick pamphlet version I would give to the Christian wanting to talk with atheists. Don't be afraid of a conversation.
Mhm.
We're all people. We're all human. We all make mistakes. These conversations should never rare as you think they will be. You're gonna find a human inside that atheist, I promise you.
Hopefully. Or a baby eating demon. I actually don't think that's funny.
It's so funny because we do that. Hey, get down. Get down. We do that on
Don't talk
purpose
to Talissa
because
like that.
that was my dog. She likes to sit up on the top. She sits on the top of cushions and then the couch is all looking saggy, and I don't want that. So I make her. If she's gonna be on the couch, she needs to be on the couch cushions, not on the back. This is your listeners don't give a damn about this.
No.
No, they don't. I forgot what I was talking about.
Christians talking to atheists. Baby eating demons.
Yeah, the whole baby eating thing. It's baby eating thing. It's so ridiculous as we make fun of, because that's one of those straw man ridiculous. It's just like one of the worst things you could imagine someone doing. Like
eating,
God, it's
eating a
terrible.
baby. Yeah. So, would your advice for?
Again, we're so bad.
Yeah. We're so bad that we eat babies.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
What were we gonna say? What's my advice for?
Well, I'm just gonna ask. Is your advice for the kind of reverse atheists who? Actually, what about Christians who don't want to reach out to atheists? What would you say to them?
1 Peter 3:15. Why not? Also Matthew 7:21. Are you doing the will of the Father in heaven? If you're staying in your own little bubble, not actively talking to people about your faith and sharing your faith, are you following the Bible? If you're not willing to offer a defense for your faith with gentleness and respect, you're not being biblical. So why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you? And are those reasons more about you're afraid to think about things? You're afraid to be challenged? Yeah. Oh no, I'll just let the atheists believe what they want to believe. Is that it? Or is there a part of you that's afraid to have to consider positions you've never considered before?
Yeah.
Dialogue is always good, even if it's a bad conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's always good to talk and to get things out. So it's not, very rarely do conversations take a turn and then I finish the show and go, I should have never talked to that guy. I don't think I've ever done that in 6.5 years of having my show. I've never said I regret having that show. Even I've now flipped out on a guest twice in 379 episodes. 2 times have I canceled the show early and thrown somebody off the show. Twice out of 379. If those odds don't make you feel good about having a conversation with an atheist, I don't know what does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to answer your other question, for atheists, I would give the exact same advice.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah, Rappaport's rules always apply. Listening always applies.
Mm-hmm.
Being respectful and Socratic is always the most effective.
For sure. Is there any argument in favor of Christianity, or I guess any kind of God, that's really stuck with you? That whether it made sense to you, or whether it kind of made you think, or whether it was just maybe even it was just so out there that you'd never heard it before. Any kind of argument that really sticks with you in any of those ways?
The problem of evil is what I talk about probably the most on my show. Mm-hmm. And I would say the best argument I've ever heard that even and I've never really heard it worded this way, so I'm going to try to word it better. Again, that's kind of what we're supposed to do in Rappaport's rules. Explain it back to the Christian in a way that they would say, I wish I would have thought of it that way, mm-hmm. or worded it that way. And is that if you look at every life form that we have on the planet, there is something happening within that life form that they don't fully understand, and that if they were to try to explain it in their limited terms, it would feel like magic. The ant has no idea that it's a water hose that destroyed their ant mound or their ant hill, right? They have to them that's a natural disaster, but it was a 10-year-old with a water hose. They have no idea. Rats. You go, well, these rats are trying to make this happen and make that happen. Suddenly, there's this huge loss of population. Some would call, how did that happen? Well, we know that something intelligent laid down lots and lots of rat poison to control the population, right? So every step of the way up the chain of intelligence, there are things that happen that are unexplained. And then when we get to our level of intelligence, we think we're it. There's nothing pulling the string. That's one thing that's made me go, maybe there's something pulling the string. Or how do we know that there's not something pulling the string? And if it's not religion, if it's not a God, could it be some other life form, some other larger life form, some sort of alien life or whatever that could potentially be doing this? It opens up a philosophical discussion to go, we do find patterns, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing we get. And if we can go, well, the flea doesn't understand, and the fly doesn't understand, and the ant doesn't understand, and the lizard doesn't understand, and the squirrel doesn't understand, and the marsupial doesn't understand, and the monkey doesn't understand, but we totally have it figured out. That's the one thing where we break that pattern and go, wait a minute, maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. That's one thing that I guess adds a little more mystery to the atheist perspective, to say maybe we don't have all the answers. The other thing is with the problem of evil, which is where I started this answer, is you take a 3-year-old, or I keep saying 3-year-olds hardly have teeth, say like a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old in a dentist chair. They don't understand why they're being held down or given a shot or poked and prodded and jabbed, and to them it feels like pure evil. I remember when my daughter was 3, actually, I was trying to get her to sleep in her own bed. She kept running in there, sleeping with us, and I wanted her to have her independence and sleep in her own. So we'd have talks every night. You got to sleep in your own bed. You got it in your own bed. And one day she climbs up on a shelf she shouldn't have been on and got a hold of a glass soap dispenser and was trying to be sweet to bring me a soap dispenser so that I could wash my hands without going to the bathroom so that we could eat. Well, she was walking with this glass thing that she should have never been holding. She trips, falls, breaks the glass in her hand, and open. We're rushing her to the hospital. We get to the hospital, and they're having to give her shots in the cut to avoid disease and all that other stuff. And I'm having to hold her up against my chest with her arms out behind me while the nurse is back there jabbing a needle into her open cut. And I'm having to hold her while she is screaming at the top of her lungs. And she just keeps saying, "Daddy, please let's go home. I promise I'll sleep in my own bed." And that broke my heart as a dad, because I'm going, that what I'm doing for her is actually the best for her right now. But to her, I feel completely evil. I feel like a monster that's holding her. And I did it instead of holding her down. The nurse originally wanted to literally hold her down to the bed while she got the shots. And it was my idea so that I was hugging her and she couldn't see what was happening on the other body. So I recommend anyone who ends up in that situation, do it that way, because you can hold the child's arm down with your arm while your hands are caressing them and rub back until it's okay. I would rather my daughter feel that pain while she's embraced by me down like a monster. To my daughter, with her level of intellect at that time, that was pure evil. She was begging. She was praying, some might say. I'll do anything you want, just to let the bad stuff stop. And I didn't let the bad stuff stop. The bad stuff had to happen, and she didn't understand why. Now, if we can follow that logic and say that on some level, perhaps adult humans are the 3-year-olds, maybe that's why all of these bad things happen
Mm-hmm.
that we don't understand. So as I'm talking with these Christians about children dying of cancer, nothing that would make that okay. As far as I know, there's nothing that's okay. But as far as my 3-year-old daughter knew, there was nothing that would her getting shots in her hands okay. So is it a gap in our knowledge, or is it me being too philosophically open to more information? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
These couple of things are the only things that really, they don't make me become a Christian. Of course, I'm still an atheist. But it makes me go, there are holes in everything. And if I can acknowledge those holes and see potential gaps in knowledge, it helps me to work toward filling them. But I can't do it with a confirmation bias because I don't down logic.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to admit there are a few blind spots there. And as long as I'm being completely open, because I want my guest to have, I want my guest to be open, so I'm remaining open. I would have to say those are a couple of places that, although it doesn't make sense to me right now, I can at least acknowledge that that's one thing that is a head scratcher for me, to let me step back. What if there's more to the story and we're not aware of it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Whoever brought that up definitely has a point. In general, I think just about how we know so far that life works, and like whoever said it, we can observe those kinds of patterns in nature. So, why are we excluded from that? I think that makes total sense. Yeah. Totally.
Well, no one has ever mentioned that to me. I'm the one that connected the dots with the pattern.
Okay.
So I've never heard that said way. I've just heard something simple like, well, the ant doesn't know it.
Yeah.
The ant doesn't realize it's just on one pavement block.
Mm-hmm.
That's been one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing would be like, well, the 5-year-old in the dentist chair
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. And I've just sort of connected these dots over time and sort of stacked them into presented to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, damn. Nice. Yeah. That does make you think about,
Yeah.
just the potential for more than what we know right now. For at least if the original position was there is nothing, that there can't be.
And that's again, and I don't say that that's my position.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's not enough evidence to believe in any of the gods proposed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get really weird, I think it's probably more like a far-fetched idea, but I think it's more likely that if there is anything in control, it is another higher life form that no Christian would call God.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for example...
Well, that would follow the pattern that we're talking about.
Right.
Anyway. Mm-hmm.
Right. If you follow the pattern, there could be another smarter creature that is helping to guide what we know in lives,
Mm-hmm.
when in fact there's something, and then it stands to reason greater than that creature guiding that creature's life. Almost like if we can have an ant farm and we can own rats and snakes and chinchillas and ferrets and dogs and cats, why couldn't someone own us and we not know it? Do you think the chinchilla realizes it's a pet? Does the hamster or gerbil realize it's a pet? It's owned and controlled by something else? I heard a comedian talk about his cat, and he was like, my cat always looks at me like, you're eating food. Like the cat doesn't realize that, it's got this instinct to go do stuff, and you're just so damn good at it all the time. It doesn't know why, that there's a supermarket that you go to, and, our society has made it missing from these different animal life forms that it just makes you stop and go, wait a minute, if we follow this pattern, could there be something else guiding us? Sure, there could be. I don't know what it is, and I wouldn't call it God. And I think the intellectually honest thing to do is to withhold your belief in such a creature, evidence, which makes me an atheist, which makes me disbelieve in all of the existing proposed gods out there. There is absolutely absolutely nothing greater than humans out there? No. I'm agnostic to that and atheistic toward all the theistic beliefs I've had proposed to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that position right now. And I think it's an interesting thing to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, and then I'll let you go for the night. Any advice for young people just in general, millennials in particular? You know, my audience is mostly college students, mostly, and then their parents if they happen to be on one of my episodes. But any, you know, something for young questioning religious or even young atheists or just young millennial folk in general. What would you have to say to them, to the ones listening?
If you really care, I would say if you really care, do your research. What really made me good at the arguments and is not that I just had all this knowledge all of it. It's that I would get ready to respond to someone in a print form, whether it be email or on a blog. And as I was forming my argument, I would go fact check myself and go, wait a minute, before I write this, let me make sure that this is right. In fact, it's funny that you say this, and I've never released this before. I've never told this. This is just an exclusive for your show.
Yay!
This is a CoalitionM exclusive right here.
Hey, I'm gonna mention that in the description.
It's that I found a of my book.
Hang on, say that again. You're cutting out.
Sorry, I found an old manuscript of my book with a handwritten note by me. Yeah, a baptized atheist. It published in 2009. This is gonna make me sound really silly, but it said essentially it was in this section where I was talking about how Earth couldn't have been made for humans because it's like only 22% habitable by human beings. Like the vast majority of it's these oceans where humans can't live and all this other stuff. And then I wrote, check for survival without oceans. Because I just didn't know. I was like, can we survive without oceans? And it turns out no. We are living now. Of course, God could have snapped his fingers and made it so that we didn't need the ocean to survive. But if the ocean suddenly dried up on our planet, we would be screwed. And there are a lot of biological reasons why that would be necessary. But to think that there was a moment when I was writing my book where I had this question, because I was saying it's completely pointless to have these oceans. And then I wrote out, check for survival with checking myself. And of course, I took that portion out of the book because I suddenly realized we do need that to survive. Mm-hmm. And so fact checking yourself, researching things on your own, being willing to drop bad arguments when you realize they are bad arguments is huge. You have to be able to realize a bad argument when you have it and then shut it down and say, I'm not going to use that argument anymore. There are Christian arguments like that and atheist arguments like that. One atheist argument I can think of off the top of my head that's terrible is people will say, Jesus said believers and slay them before me. Did Jesus say that? Yeah, he technically did. But he was quoting an old parable and telling a story. He was telling a story of a king who said that. So he was quoting someone else who said, bring Eve, I'm the king, and slay them before me. Jesus himself wasn't saying, bring all the atheists here and kill them. But atheists will say that, taking that out of context, and make Jesus sound like he was on a murderous rampage to slaughter all atheists. Mm-hmm. And it's just wrong. So when you realize you're abandon that argument and move on to something. So read, do your research, watch the videos, and spend the time to listen to the other side. If that's the biggest advice I could give you leaving today is just listen and genuinely inquire about someone's faith. If you step into a discussion to try to win and the other person doesn't realize they're in a fight, it's unfair. People are going to see through what you're doing. you're not going to make any progress. Your interlocutor is just going to put their walls up and not really want to continue the discussion. And so stay genuine, and it wouldn't hurt to brush up on street epistemology and go follow Anthony Magnabosco around with a microscope.
Yeah, I love him. Before we do another plug for Dogma Debate and say goodnight, do you have anything you want to ask me or anything you want to say before we go, other than check out Dogma Debate on Patreon? Oh, there's the plug.
How long do you think you'll keep doing this?
This show probably about 2 more minutes, I'd say.
You're fine. You're good. You're good.
I don't know. I really don't know, because I'm gonna graduate this year and probably go to grad school, and I just don't know if I'll have the time for it. I don't know if I'll come back to it. I don't know. I just kind of know that I'm enjoying it right now, and as frustrating as college students can be to try to grab a hold of and get on the show, I like doing it, but why? I don't know.
Oh, no, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just curious as to how long. I think that the key to not getting burnt out is to keep it fresh, and to not let the listeners control your content. So listen to feedback, but don't let them drive the ship. You know?
Yeah.
So
Makes
as
sense.
long as it's always a representative of who you really are, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
When you let someone else take the wheel and manipulate you through either shame or money or whatever, it starts feeling gross.
Yeah.
And I've had a few times where Dogma Debate dipped into that, and I had to clear from that. So just watch out for that happening. Make sure that what you're doing makes you happy.
Yeah, I've gotten stuck in conversations like that just in general, where I was emailing someone who'd been on your show before, and we were getting in the thick of nastiness, and I eventually just had to stop emailing him back. I didn't even explain to him why I was stopping. I just had to stop. But so yeah, I definitely know what that feels like. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Definitely go find David's show on Patreon or iTunes at Dogma Debate with David Smalley. Any last plugs, David? We mentioned Seth Andrew. What about that book?
Now, everything about me can be found at davidcsmalley.com. Everything.
davidcsmalley.com. All right, well, this has been the first episode of the year with Coalition M on KFHS Radio. I'm your host, Carson Lopez. Good night, guys.